Hello, welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Kate Harper of the 61st District in Montgomery County. Today we're talking about liquor. Pennsylvania has the distinction of being one of only 2 states in the whole country that controls both wholesale and retail sale of alcohol. Should the Commonwealth be in the alcohol business? And if not, what's the best way to make a change to some kind of different system? Joining me today is the chairman of the House Liquor Control Committee, Representative John Taylor from Philadelphia. Representative Taylor is here to discuss the issues involving privatization of the liquor system or the state stores, and to talk about what he's doing in his Liquor Control Committee to improve consumer convenience and choice and to deal with all the issues that are raised by this question. Welcome to the program, Representative Taylor.
Representative, glad to be here.
All right. Now, in my district, people aren't following this too closely, but they do know that the governor has proposed privatizing the state store system or selling the liquor stores, or however you want to call it. What are some of the issues that your committee's been talking about and dealing with in viewing the governor's proposal and any other proposals that are on the floor?
Well, I think I and my committee share the governor's goals of getting out of the business, and keep in mind that we've been in this business for 80 years. So how do we transition into a private system and do the least amount of damage and have a system that works? So a lot of the issues really revolve around the current license holders, those folks that have spent a lot of money and invested in their license, whether it's a beer distributor or a restaurant, tavern, deli, or whatever. So we're trying to mold this plan around those current licensees, so their value of their license and their business, the value is not diluted and their business can continue to prosper, or at least have some predictability about how to move forward.
How it's going to happen. I do know that the beer distributors in my district have come to visit me, and they pointed out, and this is absolutely correct, they're wonderful public-spirited citizens. They're usually the guys who sponsor the Little League teams. They're out there, they're members of our community, and they have bought liquor licenses. A beer distributor license in Montgomery County is worth more than $300,000, and they've also often mortgaged their homes to buy one. And they're very worried that if there's going to be beer in every Rite Aid or even every supermarket, that the value of their license will be nothing, but they will still owe the bank for buying it. What are we doing about that?
Currently their industry has been under attack because grocery stores have purchased restaurant licenses, and there's 160 grocery stores now in Pennsylvania that operate with beer sales through a restaurant license.
Yes.
There's also basically taverns that have bought, beer distributors that have bought tavern license and sell 6-packs, which beer distributors right now don't have the right to do.
Right,
so
if you go to a beer distributor, you got to buy a case.
Yeah, no matter what we do with privatization, beer distributors would like some of those changes, and taverns would as well. But when you expand, starting back to where the governor was, when you expand into every grocery store, pharmacy, and convenience store, you can basically knock all 1,200 of those businesses completely out of business. All
the beer distributors are out of business
and
because they have nothing to sell that isn't...
Right, and we're trying to give them some time to adapt to the market, to give them some predictability, some stability, but a way to adjust their business model to compete. Because eventually, the product is going to be much more prevalent, and the stores are going to close. And these plans that we're talking about usually revolve around state stores closing. But when people talk about privatization, it's more than state stores, it's more than wine and spirits, it's really how we purchase beer.
Well, the truth is people don't like the fact that they go to one store to buy the steak for a Saturday night dinner, another store to buy the bottle of wine, and if the husband drinks beer instead of wine, they got to go to a third store and buy beer. When they get to the beer store, you have to buy a whole case. And maybe you only need a 6-pack or 2 6-packs or something like that if you're going to have another couple over to dinner, and it's a hassle. That's what people talk to me about, John.
Well, and a lot of that, they're right. They're right. And other states don't have those problems, and again, we're trying to get there. So package reform has been one of the things that has been elusive for the legislature for decades.
And package reform, you mean selling less than a whole case?
Selling less than a whole case in a beer distributor and more than 2 6-packs in a restaurant license, which includes restaurants and taverns and now grocery stores.
Okay. Yes, I've actually seen that in a number of municipalities in my area where the supermarket comes in and buys a liquor license, and there'll be a hearing where the people get to comment on it. But the long and short of it is they're buying it for a restaurant, and they'll set up a little restaurant in the store. But really, if you want to do your grocery shopping and you buy that steak for the dinner, you pop into the little restaurant in the store and you can buy the beer right there. It's good for the consumer, but not so hot for the guy who has the beer store.
Yeah, and they're the matters we're trying to adjust, and we're getting there slowly.
Well, and then other people come to me and talk about the fact that the United Food and Commercial Workers Union 1776 is actually headquartered in my district. And so I visited with them, and there are many state store workers who don't want to lose their jobs, but that's a necessary consequence of this, isn't it?
And that's one of the real problems. I mean, how do you transition to a private system when you have maybe as many as 4,000 state employees? In some of the legislation, we're trying to accommodate them with a series of tax credits and grants for a school and civil service points and things like that.
So they can transition to another job entirely?
Yes, and I think the way we envision it, there'll be so many outlets and so much need for wine experts and folks that understand inventory and how to move that product around that we think there'll be jobs there. I mean, we are offering as many as 1,200 new licenses. So currently there's 605 state stores in Pennsylvania. Through the beer distributors alone, and some of them will sell their license, we will create the possibility of 1,200 beer, wine, and spirit shops. All 1,200 of those will need additional employees. They're not going to be able to run these operations on the current number of employees they have. I think that the experience that some of these folks have will be very, very valuable. And there are other state jobs that they may be able to go into. But it's a serious problem. I think for members, it's a pretty major concern.
For the members of the legislature?
For members of the legislature about those jobs, and we'd rather not do that. But currently there's not been adequate enough talk about how this public system could provide consumer convenience, because there's just been a sense from the union that we're not agreeing to anything. So that has sort of stopped a lot of maybe positive discussion. And then there's other members of this legislature, as you know, that their only goal is to get the state out of the liquor business. Our goal in committee is really more about consumer convenience, making people be able to purchase product in a more sensible way like other states.
Well, and I really do think that's what most Pennsylvanians want, isn't it?
They want that, and we're trying to get there, but we're trying to take 80 years of a system evolving and transitioning it in one piece of legislation.
Now,
so
some
that can
people
be very
say
difficult.
that the state store system, which I have read, is similar only to Utah. I've been in lots of states. Like if you go to New Jersey, and most of us go to Jersey for the shore, you can go to a store that sells a beer, wine, and alcohol right on the Summers Point Circle. If you want on your way in, buy it, even if you go to Ocean City, which is dry, okay? But you can buy it someplace else. In North Carolina, you can buy beer and wine in the supermarket, but if you want to get hard liquor like gin or whiskey or something, you got to go to a state-run ABC store.
Yeah.
Are we looking at that kind of stuff?
I think it's been a little unfair to characterize Pennsylvania as being that old-fashioned in terms of the same as Utah, because every single state has some control over different facets of alcohol. It's hard to describe. For example, I know Target sells beer and wine in 36 different states. In every state, it's a little different. Some states do not have product in grocery stores. Some states, the state controls spirits. Virginia, beer is private, wine is private, spirits is not. New Jersey is pretty wide open. New York is restricted in some ways. So every state has some restrictions, some oversight. So government's involved in the sale of alcohol in every state. It's just a matter at what level. We in Pennsylvania have stayed with the wholesale being in public hands as well as the retail. And I think that that's going to change.
Well, I mean, I do hear people concerned about they would like the ability to buy beer, wine, and spirits more easily, but they have some misgivings about putting it in a retail setting where maybe there's a teenager selling it. We're not doing away with the Liquor Control Board, right? That's going to still be around?
You're not going to do away with the regulatory part. And it's interesting because there's, in our hearings, there's been studies both ways. Studies that privatized states are much more dangerous. I always come to the conclusion that if private states were that much more dangerous compared to us, they'd be moving back toward a public system, and you haven't seen anybody do that. We have to put the proper amount of money into compliance with our liquor code, with education, and make sure that we have a beefed up enforcement system in Pennsylvania that's second to none.
Well, we have to make sure that we don't sell liquor to children or 16-year-olds. Or
in our legislation, we're going to require that scanning device that would make every single person have to prove their identity. Even folks like us would have to prove that we were old enough. I mean, I know in some places now they scan Wegmans scans every single license that comes in.
It's been a long time since I've been carded, John. I just have to say that.
That'll make you feel good if we do that, but that's just one way to make sure that it's done, because there's technology now that it should be done. If the more you spread it out, the more worried I think folks will be, but there's ways to do it.
Well, I think a lot of industries have seen change. I mean, I know in Montgomery County, we've seen a lot of the family-owned supermarket chains disappear in favor of much larger stores. That maybe 70,000 square foot grocery store that would be 3 times as big as an old Gennardi's, and so they're selling different things. They're selling things that are not quite food. And by the same token, if you go into a Target or a Walmart, often half of their floor space is spent on stuff that I would normally think to buy in a grocery market. So I think the entire consumable retail industry is changing also. Have you
It's changed.
discussed
It evolves. I always think of the pharmacy industry and
Yes.
large pharmacies popping up. We're going to wipe out every small neighborhood pharmacy. In our area of Philadelphia, the small neighborhood-driven pharmacies have not only survived but thrived, right in the shadow of CVS and Rite Aid. And I think you're going to see that in this industry as well. You're going to see smaller operations pop up that may have a unique product, a great location, sensitive in pricing. So I think there's markets out there. The alcohol purchasing public is a pretty sophisticated crowd right now. In Philadelphia, we are the craft brew capital of the world, with craft beers from all over the world.
He's taking craft beer. What's not to like?
Yeah. I mean, there's much more discriminating taste. People want to shop. They want to have choice in terms of beer. They want to have choice in terms of wine and spirits as well. And there's just so many products that could be on any given shelf. And you can break that up into different type of stores. There's very few stores that have it all. Even if there was a completely privatized world, it's very tough to do that all at once and do it well. Some stores around America to do that.
Well,
so I think there's a market for all different types of operations.
Where we live in southeastern Pennsylvania, it's not unusual to get advertising about outlets in other states. State of Delaware, state of New Jersey. Our newspaper, the Philadelphia Inquirer, is full of advertisements for New Jersey outlets for beer, liquor, and wine. And the same would be true of the state of Delaware, where they don't even have a sales tax. So I've heard people say that we'd make more money as a Commonwealth if we held on to it, because we do actually net revenue from the state store system right now, don't we?
Yeah, I think if we change our system, I certainly want to decriminalize the notion of buying alcohol in a different state. I mean, in Philadelphia, in many cases, New Jersey is just another neighborhood. People shop over there and visit relatives and go to the movies and do things in Jersey the way they do in Pennsylvania. So as long as they were paying the taxes, I'm sure all of our residents are doing on every purchase that they make in another state.
Well, I certainly hope so.
They would have that same opportunity to do that with alcohol.
All right, hold on to that thought, because we're going to take a short break, and legislative report will return in just a moment. When we come back, we'll be talking about, what is the effect on the system and the economy of Pennsylvania if we make some of the changes that we've been talking about. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that there are 6 ornate bronze chandeliers hanging in the House chamber? The 4 large chandeliers are estimated to weigh 3 tons each, yet these iron and brass fixtures painted in 18-karat gold manage to dangle effortlessly. It takes 168 light bulbs to light the large chandeliers and 84 light bulbs on each of the smaller chandeliers. As you can imagine, changing the light bulbs when they burn out is far from easy. Workers must build scaffolding in order to reach their 1,450 light bulbs. Today, special, long-life, low-wattage energy-saving bulbs are used to lessen the amount of times that the light bulbs will need to be replaced. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Kate Harper. My guest today is Representative John Taylor, Chairman of the House Liquor Control Committee, and a colleague from Philadelphia. We're discussing the very hot topic of privatizing state liquor stores, or more commonly, finding beer, wine, and other spirits in places other than a government-run store. Now, you alluded to this a little bit, John, but I've actually had constituents walk up to me and say, "Tell me why I have to go to a government store to buy a bottle of booze, Kate." And I'm like, whoa, I'm okay with this. We're working on it. So let's talk about the fact that some people say that we should be in the liquor business because, number one, we can control it so it doesn't get into the hands of teenagers, kids, drivers, visibly intoxicated people. And the other people who say that we're actually making money on liquor, so it's a good deal for us and we should be in it. What would you say to those folks, or what is your committee saying?
Keep in mind that this started in 1933. It's a system that has survived since then. Many folks have tried to dismantle that. And one of the things is that, governors change, and every legislative year we have a budget to do. And in fact, that this particular system that we have now creates $100 million a year in profit.
Right, we net that.
That's
after we
net.
pay all the state workers and all that.
That's net, and another $400 million in taxes. Now, in a privatized market, you could argue that those taxes will stay the same. But at least in terms of sale of alcohol, spirits, and wine, you've got pretty much a 100% collection rate on that. So that's been one of the reasons for a long time that when it comes to budget time, it hasn't been considered worth it to make that transition.
Because we were making money. So why get out of a business where we're making money?
But I think that the dissatisfaction with this system has grown.
The consumers
Again,
are
as we
unhappy.
said in last segment, they're a more discriminating purchaser of alcohol. And now there's more of an outcry for a different operation. And we are going to expand it quite a bit. That expansion is going to cause certainly that system to break down in terms of the feasibility of it and the finances. And that's something in state government you have to be willing to make that trade-off. Now we're trying to make sure it's revenue neutral, that $100 million will still be there.
Right.
We're
not going to change the taxes.
Taxes will be exactly the same in the bill that we're talking about.
And we might sell more booze.
We even
Made
could.
it easier.
You might see a concerted effort to reduce tax, to reduce what we used to call the Johnstown floods tax. It's still 18%. It's not really called that, but that's what everybody refers to it.
It's an example of how once you put a tax in, you never get rid of it. I think most people use it that way.
Yeah, our every product is heavily taxed. You have a 30% markup. You have an 18% Johnstown flood tax. And then you have a 6% sales tax.
Well, what would private industry mark up a product?
They mark it up based on the market rather than a fixed number. Our market is fixed. It has to be across the Commonwealth. It can't change. It takes months for us to change. Any retailer would change that price daily.
Like gas.
Yeah, and do discounts. So we've often talked about making that system much more business friendly. give the current system the ability to change the markup, change prices, do sales, that
Sure,
kind of
why
thing.
wouldn't they want to, for example, sell Irish whiskey cheaper on St. Patrick's Day, or something tied to 4th of July that was red, white, and blue in packaging? You never know.
And a real contradiction in the entire argument is that the legislature has been putting the handcuffs on the PLCB for a long time. The very legislature that now is talking about privatization. So that's still a possibility as these discussions continue, but it's very difficult for a state agency like this one to transition quickly unless we invest more money into it. And you know, members of our caucus are probably going to be very reluctant to put
I just
more
remember
money.
the disastrous experience of trying to have vending machines for wine. That didn't work.
Yeah, and they were able to do that because that did not require legislative approval. And
And the market's going to be a little more nimble than we are. A change. And I have to say, for the viewers, don't think that the entire legislature feels that this is going to happen the way Representative Taylor and I are discussing it, because we have colleagues who believe the current system is the best system. Isn't that right?
Well, we have colleagues that might not think it's the best system, but they still want to keep it for the funding, for the jobs, and for the possibility that it's a better system in terms of kids gaining alcohol and safety.
Not gaining alcohol, right? Controlling it. I'm thinking of a colleague whom I like very much who would probably be opposed to anything that made alcohol more widely available. You know, and he's a great guy. But we do have members of the legislature who feel that way. We also have dry counties in Pennsylvania still. So.
Yeah, and you know, an interesting statistic, at least in terms of folks that testified in front of us, there's as many as 50% of all Pennsylvanians do not drink ever.
Half?
Half.
That surprises me.
And half of the other half drink on very few occasions. So you have about a quarter of the population that drives most of the sales in Pennsylvania.
They must be able to people who stop me in the supermarket and ask me when they're going to be able to buy.
Yeah, so a lot of folks that are in drug and alcohol treatment are concerned about that. That, you know, folks that drink, there's a small percentage that consume most of the alcohol. So, you know, they're concerned. They want more money, and as you know, Representative DiGirolamo has the bill for a drug and alcohol department, and you know, we're trying to do some things to fund that, make sure there's services available.
Making it easier for the consumers to purchase, it also makes it easier for people who have a problem.
Yeah, and you know, we should try to be as much in prevention as we are in rehabilitation. It's a lot easier to stop the problem first.
Well, talking about prevention, what are we going to do to stop teenagers from buying liquor? I mean, if you turn it into like a Wawa situation, you know, maybe the guy behind the counter is about the same age as the person trying to buy it illegally. What about that?
Well, it'll be a management situation. I mean, the difference between that person and the owner of that store compared to the state store is that person's got a major investment in that license. And serving the minors is a way to lose that license just like that. So you would think that they have incentive to not do it. You know, in other states there's been problems. So we're not changing the enforcement method. We're going to put more money towards beefing that up. That's really sort of a piece of the state police right now. We need that to be more voluminous than less in terms of the efforts. So it's a concern.
Well, if the governor's plan or some alternate plan should pass, what do you see on the other side? You know, you're a typical Montgomery County resident or Philadelphia resident. What do you think it'll look like a couple years from now?
Well, I think it'll pretty rapidly. You'll see a multiplier of 3 in terms of places now where you can buy spirits. You'll see as many as 1,200 to 1,800 places where you can buy beer, spirits, and wine in one place. In grocery stores, in the short term, you'll certainly be able to buy wine. In some grocery stores, you'll be able to buy beer and wine if they have a restaurant license. So the face of the landscape for the purchase of alcohol is going to be much, much different in Pennsylvania.
And much better for the consumer.
And you'll be able to, in more sensible laws in the course of that purchase, you'll be able to buy 6-packs from beer distributors. You'll be able to buy more if you go to your local tavern if you want to. There's no more 2 6-pack restriction.
Right.
So a lot of these laws were designed to, to keep every industry in its place, and those lines are a little more blurred. And we're trying to give the consumer an opportunity to buy whatever they want. I mean, it'd be easy to say any licensee can sell whatever they want, but we're still in the process of protecting certain industries and make sure folks don't go out of business because of a legislative initiative.
Well, if we created a market, as we did with the beer distributors, it's not fair to them.
Yeah, that's a government-regulated market.
Take it away.
And keep in mind, and maybe the viewers don't realize it.
They have their homes mortgaged to pay for their license.
And they can only, by statute, they can only sell beer. They can sell some soda, and they can sell related products to beer. Not a lot of products. Grocery stores can sell everything under the sun and beer. They probably can sell it cheaper because of all the other products. So, the market, I guess in our caucus, the market's going to be important, but you just have to do sensible things in the course of that to make sure people at least have an opportunity to survive, an opportunity to compete.
And what about the issues of people who are worried about, there goes the neighborhood, there's a beer store on every corner? Is that going to be a problem?
I think we're nowhere near the saturation point of sales.
We're still going to limit the number of licenses available?
It's going to be very limited. We're not going to be anywhere near, in the early stages of this, where other states are in terms of outlets per capita. So we're well off that. And there'll still be local zoning laws in place in terms of where things can be. There's also restrictions in the liquor code about where outlets can be. So those things are not going to change. I think that each and every county, and certainly in the Southeast, can absorb more outlets and more places to buy. And I think it won't be a problem.
Well, in the very short time we have left, which is less than a minute, I want to ask you why you think the legislature is going to get the job done this year when you've been here a lot longer than I have, but it's been tried before and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, I think the governor initiating this particular bill this session is helpful. He's been out in front. I think members are, again, more sensitive to their buying public, and I think that public, again, wants this opportunity.
Right, I think they've made that pretty clear. Most of the polls are overwhelmingly in favor of doing something to make it more available.
And we just have to do it in a way that makes sense.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your being here, Representative Taylor. That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Kate Harper. If you need assistance with any state government matter, feel free to contact me at my local office. The address and number will be shown in just a moment, or visit me on the web. And thank you once again to Representative John Taylor from Philadelphia for joining me this time for Legislative Report.